So this Season 9 Sorcerer build really has a lot going for it, from incredible damage to great speed from teleporting, survivability coming from crowd control as well as being able to play from afar if you wanted to. Not to mention it's got a really chill playstyle and comes with lots of cool spell effects too. It honestly doesn't get much better than this unless you just simply prefer a completely different type of build or class. But if all that sounds good to you, then welcome to my quick start build guide for the Season 9 Hydra Sorcerer. So with that, quickly touching on leveling and basically a journey to Torment 1, as Torment 1 is like a big milestone since you can start farming your bosses for like the main uniques that you need, right? But anyhow, before then, you can definitely level with Hydra and it's still a strong and safe build. Or you can level with like a different build that you prefer, but I think if you're just gonna go with Hydra at the end, it might be good to kind of acquaint yourself with the same build. But I would not recommend going full Conjuration at the very start because it'll be a bit harder to get a lot of Conjurations going and having as many like Primordial Binding ranks. So instead, you can definitely opt for a combo of like Hydra with its burning damage and also with Firewall, because as you can see, if you spec into Enhanced Firewall, you'll actually deal multiplicative burning damage for any enemies that are burning and also in your Firewall, so that's kind of a strong synergy there. Alright, and with that, going into Torment 1, the bosses that you want to target and the uniques that you want to get as soon as possible are of course the Ophidian Iris. This is basically core to the build because it'll greatly buff up your Hydras, as you can see here, not only turning it into a core skill, but making it so that your Hydras deal more damage and also shoot like explosive bolts. And these bolts will still burn enemies too. So this is like a key item to have. It comes from both Duriel and Andariel. So whichever you have the materials for, you can definitely just do Torment 1 and they should be pretty easy to take down as long as you kind of know the mechanics. So again, either Duriel or Andariel, and they are located, of course, Duriel is right here by Gaeakul, and I realized it actually says on the map now, so you should be able to find them pretty easily. But anyhow, Andariel is right over here next to the Tarsaraq waypoint. But perhaps even before you get the Ophidian Iris, because Duriel and Andariel are more like advanced bosses compared to the other bosses. For example, Varshan would be one of the first bosses you'll have access to. And again, you can just do him in Torment 1, it'll be easy, and through him you want to collect the Talrasha's Iridescent Loop, because if you have conjuration skills with each of them being a different element, this will allow you to easily stack up this ring and give you a huge multiplier. Next, Axial Conduit is actually really good as well. Again, I didn't get this idea, I didn't come up with this idea myself, but rather got this knowledge from some of the top build creators out there, so I definitely need to give them credit, including renowned players like Rob, as well as Northwar, Sorcerer Expert. So a lot of this build does come from them, but I've kind of made it my own with my personal preferences, which I'll explain shortly. But anyhow, Axial Conduit is great because of the resource generation, and I'll explain why resource generation is important, but most of the other stats like pertaining to like chain lightning and stuff, it doesn't even matter at all. Just the resource generation here alone, and you want to like ideally hit a greater affix eventually and also masterwork that specific stat up as well. That alone is enough reason to use Axial Conduit over any other pants basically. This comes from farming Grigor, the Galvanic Saint, which is also a pretty easily and early accessible bosses. You'll be able to farm him over here as long as you have Living Steel, and again, of course, Living Steel drops from Hell Tides, right? And you should be able to collect some just from leveling through Hell Tides. Now, as for the best aspects to have, it's also pretty straightforward. The most powerful one here probably is Serpentine's aspect, because this will directly buff up your Hydra, and the damage is higher depending on how much mana you have whenever you summon your Hydra, which goes back to the resource generation of Axial Conduit. This will, of course, allow you to regenerate mana more and just have more mana per cast whenever you cast your Hydra, because this also makes it so that you consume mana or all of your mana whenever you cast a Hydra. So of course you want to top off your mana as much as possible, right? Which is why you want to use Axial Conduit. And also Serpentine's Aspect, which is extremely powerful in this combination. For another one, really important aspect and powerful aspect is the Battlecasters, because once you transition to a more full-on Conjuration build, you'll be able to benefit from this greatly because it actually stacks. So like whenever you have Conjurations hit, you have a lucky hit chance to gain +1 rank to your Conjuration skills, and it can get all the way up to +10. So that's incredibly powerful for just one aspect, as long as you have enough Conjurations out, of course, and like a decent lucky hit chance, I suppose. But you don't technically really need to go out of your way to get lucky hit chance either. Aside from that, for the last offensive aspect, I like to use Stormswell. This is just like a good consistent multiplier because I like to run Ice Armor as well, and your Ice Armor cooldown will be reduced pretty quickly with its like enhancement. Whenever you spend mana, you lower the cooldown, so you have this up pretty consistently, and it also helps your mana regeneration, which again is really helpful for this aspect, which spends your mana to give your Hydra more damage, right? But anyhow, you wanna, or depending on preference, but I like to have Stormswell here, or you could replace this with like any other decent like offensive aspect that you have with like a decent multiplier, right? This one has like a 35, up to a 35% multiplier, which is pretty strong. Alright, and that's basically the offensive part of the gear, and I haven't gone into like the new gems yet. As you can see, I don't have the gems, like the new gems equipped, because this is filmed on a non-seasonal character, but I'll definitely get to that later. But before that, let's talk about defense and the rest of the gear, and also runes next. So for defense, and of course this is before mythics, so whenever you get your mythics, the good mythics like Shaco, you can replace, you know, whichever pieces with those. But for now, before mythics, I have a helm with plus Hydra, and it's very notable that helms can roll plus Hydra, so that's really strong actually. And ideally, if you can get cooldown reduction on your helm as well, instead of max life here, that'll be a little bit better as well. For the aspect, I like to use Snow Veiled, just to have your Ice Armor give you Unstoppable and more damage reduction. And again, Ice Armor can be maintained pretty well because you're spending so much mana, right? For the next one, this is kind of a no-brainer. You want the Concentration aspect because you're casting lots of Conjuration skills, so you have like a consistent good damage reduction from this aspect alone. For some of these stats, these are pretty standard as well. It's like life, armor from your tempering, barrier generation is good as well. Intelligence is standard, right? Quickly going on to boots, it's also like a lot of movement speed, but here my boots are not optimized. You'll want to have like the increased evade charges, because many variants of this build, including mine, run the teleport enchantment, and by doing this you can actually take teleport off of your bar, and I'd actually replace it with lightning spear and like familiar, but depending on your preferences you can use slightly different skills as well, but I'll get to skills in a bit. But anyhow, teleport enchantment here is just your evade becomes a teleport, of course, which means having the extra evade charges on your boots is really important if you're running that enchantment, right? Which, again, I think a lot of people are. But there are other enchantment options too if you wish. Anyhow, that's it for boots mostly. For your tempering, you can also go for like reduced teleport cooldown or reduced evade cooldown, stuff like that, right? Currently I just have like movement speed, so this is like really basic. I haven't fully like tempered it. For the other pieces, the legendaries of the uniques, of course, are fixed. For the other stuff, like my ring, I have Inferno cooldown reduction, which is the ultimate, so that's really strong. You should try to get that, and Hydra damage. Another option is like Pyromancy attack speed, I think. That's also decent. Yeah, I have it on my gloves. So between Hydra damage and Pyromancy attack speed, I think Pyromancy attack speed is more of like a pushing oriented option, because you're able to, because with like harder pits, right, for example, or harder content, or maybe even bosses, your Hydras are going to be sticking around for a longer time at the same place, attacking more frequently. Whereas if you're more into like the speed farming burst damage type of thing, say you're teleporting a lot, your Hydras are just getting like one shot off and just blowing everything up in one shot. If that's like the playstyle and build you're going for, you might want to go instead for Hydra damage, which also can roll really, really high. So I think overall Hydra damage is maybe slightly better, but for like maximum pushing DPS, you might want to consider Pyromancy attack speed too. We'll see how the theory crafting turns out. Anyhow, for gloves, it's also really good to get plus to core skills because if you have the Ophidian Iris, once you get it, your Hydra gets upgraded into a core skill. So that's why this will allow that to, your Hydra to benefit from this affix. Really cool stuff. For your weapon, you want to make sure to have additional heads on your Hydra. It's a bit hard to temper, which is kind of annoying, but it is what it is, because there's actually a range that you can roll. Even if you do get the right tempering, you have to roll like to the high end as well, right? So that's kind of the tough part of it. But if you can roll the additional heads, that'll just give you like, even though your Ophidian Iris causes your Hydra to only have 3 heads, but with this aspect, or with this tempering or affix rather, each additional head that your Hydra is supposed to have will instead give it additional multiplicative damage, which is ridiculous, right? So just having these extra Hydra heads from your weapon alone, in combination with the Ophidian Iris, will give you tons more damage potentially. So this is actually a really, really key part of the build, which again, you do have to kind of RNG and like get lucky with, which is, yeah, you just gotta get lucky with it. And then for the other tempering, I have plus Hydra damage as well. Again, mainly for like the really, really high roll that you can get out of it. Now moving on to runes really quick. I do have some of the better runes here, but it's really good to have the Spirit Wolf rune, which is Say. You want to get this early because it allows you to stack your conjuration damage with Primordial Binding. So the wolves that you summon will count towards this. So that'll just be really strong, contributing to that. And whatever you can get to trigger that, I have Igni, which I think is a legendary rune. So if you don't have that yet, you can definitely go for like some alternative, right? Maybe Pock is really good. There's some other decent options as well. The other runes that I have are Ohm. These are both legendary. So Nagu Ohm, Warcry just gives you increased damage, and then Nagu just gives you offering whenever you have summons out. So both of these are legendary. You can just run whatever you prefer. There's like the ultimate cooldown reduction rune, that's pretty strong as well, and however you want to trigger it depending on whatever runes you have. Alright, and on to skills and Paragon real fast. Again, I'll go through this relatively quickly, and you can check out the rest of the smaller details on the character planner that I linked below. But anyhow, for skills, this is just filler, Firebolt. Down here you have Elemental Dominance, and then Devastation, because increasing your mana again benefits your Hydra with this aspect. That's why we're adding the maximum mana here. Next is kind of a matter of preference, whether you want Flame Shield or not. Some builds I've noticed do take Flame Shield, and this might actually be better, and of course you can easily just spec out, right? So some builds will take Flame Shield depending on the encounter or the content you're doing. Say if you're doing like certain Uber bosses or certain bosses, you can definitely swap out of, say, Lightning Spear and go into Flame Shield, right? So personally, I just have Lightning Spear right here for now and on my bar because of the stunning that it has, and just to give me an additional element to easily have like Talrashas up, and just to have more conjurations up more easily with Primordial Binding, right? But again, kind of a matter of preference here. Back over here, Ice Armor, as I mentioned before, with Shimmering Ice Armor. Glass Cannon is basically a given. Teleport is also a given. I don't have it on my bar, but I am running the enchantment. Speaking of which, the other enchantment I'm running is Hydra. Hydra is really strong. I think they fixed it since the PTR, so it's supposed to be better now. Anyhow, back to skills. Moving over to the main part of the skills, it's the conjuration tree. I have lots of points in here, obviously maxing out Hydra, taking the burn damage here. There's actually an alternate build using crit damage, because the Ophidian Iris does make your Hydra's fireballs explode, so that is an element of direct damage. So there is actually a direct damage variant to this build, but I'm personally running like the burning damage variant, which is why I'm using the burning version. If you go for a direct damage version, you can also swap out this aspect for like the fire or pyromancy crit damage like aspect. That could be really strong as well, and also kind of depends on which aspects have better rolls that you pick up along the way. But anyhow, I just thought I'd quickly mention that. You can check out Rob's Hydra build. He has it in his build, one of the direct damage versions. So I'll defer you to him if you're interested in that. Next, Here I have Ice Blades, just 1 point, and the other conjurations. Familiar, Ice Blades, and Lightning Spear. Again, Lightning Spear is kind of a flex pick. Ice Blades down here for cooldown reduction, pretty good. The Vulnerable from Ice Blades and Lightning Spear is pretty cool as well. So of course you want to max out Primordial Binding. Here I also have Mana Shield for survivability. Moving on, 3 points for just increased damage while healthy. Some other standard stuff, Permafrost, just having a Frost spell on your bar gives you extra damage. Again, the aforementioned increased damage to vulnerable enemies. Here is like, you get more damage depending on like different types of elements you have equipped. Also, cooldown reduction is good, benefits lots of skills like your conjurations and your ultimate. I also maxed out Inferno. This is yet another vulnerable damage source. Max it out for lower cooldown if you want. Then take some of these fire passes, these are strong. And then last but not least, extra burning damage from the key passive here. Again, if you're running direct damage, you can go for the Isu's Ferocity for crit damage. Onto Paragon really quickly. There's actually a couple of versions to this, and as you can see, I haven't really have gotten all the glyphs yet. One of the versions that I've seen that I personally prefer is to run the following boards. So starter, of course, and then Burning Instinct, since I'm running the Burning variant. And then the other board here is Fundamental Release. Increases your non-physical damage by quite a lot. And also, as an added bonus to that, whenever you apply Vulnerable or Crit, enemies also take extra damage from you. So this is a really strong passive legendary node. Next, Frigid Fate is just really strong. Gives you extra damage up to 60% multiplicative to vulnerable enemies. Very strong. And then last but not least here I have Enchantment Master. Some people do run the Conjuration board. I am notably not running the Conjuration board. This is based on North War's configuration, so I trust him as a leading expert in sorcerers. That's why I'm running not running that Conjuration board, but I guess we'll see as time goes on the next few days whether this is indeed the best boards to run. Now for legendary glyphs or for glyphs, I'm running Eliminator for damage to elites. Here it's empty, but it's supposed to be Flame Feeder. Flame Feeder gives you burning damage. Again, you can see it on my planner in the link below. Pyromaniac, I haven't leveled it up enough, but this is just extra fire damage. And up here, this is also an empty slot because I haven't collected it, but it's supposed to be Conjurer. So this is a conjuration glyph. So Conjurer here. Conjure gives you higher critical strike chance on your conjurations and increased damage on them. And last but not least here, I have Elementalist. Just strong damage multiplier for having different elements. Alright, and moving on to the season specific stuff, starting with the Horadric Spellcraft. This is mostly pretty standard, but you're running the fire infusion here. And then these are also standard. Bloody Charm executes non-bosses. Fracture Core disables Resistance Aura, which is extremely useful because Resistance Auras are annoying, and this will increase your damage and efficiency by a lot, even though you're taking a bit more damage. And then here, Reactive Moves is strong because, again, it synergizes with the Serpentine aspect, so you want more resource generation. But this one is somewhat of a flex pick, I suppose. You find that you're not teleporting and spamming Hydras that much necessarily. You can maybe go for Bottled Wind, although you do already have a lot of barrier from other means. You can also go for the Unstoppable here, I suppose, but I think for the most part, Reactive Boost is what you want to go for. Then for the Catalyst, you can go for Cosmic Anomaly and bind it to your Hydra, whichever slot you have it on. And then for the gems, most of them is standard too. Here we have the gem called Idol from Below, which just gives you a buff and unhindered buff to your damage and survivability, but there's enemies that chase you, but this will actually contribute to your pit progress, so in a way it's really good. You can also replace this with something like Tyrant's Bane. This will just make enemies take more dot damage, but it's not as good for speed farming, of course, but maybe for some harder pushing content or certain bosses, if you need to get through some kind of bottleneck or harder bosses or whatever, you can use Tyrant's Bane if you get it. For the next gems, you have just extra elemental damage, even though you're taking slightly Scornful Light, and then last but not least here, increasing your summon damage. So whenever you injure or kill an enemy, your summons will deal 50% multiplicative more damage, which is extremely good. That is pretty much it for my Season 9 Hydra build guide. Again, I gotta give credit to Northward Rob for all the ideas, but I did add like some slight twists and personal preference stuff to it, which of course you can do so as well. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Maybe there's some stuff you would like to add or do differently based on your own preferences or best practices. But anyhow, if you enjoyed the video or found it helpful, be sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel for more cutting edge guides. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.